All right, everyone. Again, my name is Morgan Berman. I'm the founder and CEO of MilkCrate, and we're going to talk about mobile engagement and participant progress tracking for nonprofits, which I think I love the crescendo of these three presentations because it's really going to tie into measurement, outputs and outcomes, and goals. So what we're going to do is we're going to cover some common analog and digital engagement tools that some of you are probably already using today. We're going to talk about MilkCrate and how does it work. And specifically take a look at some case studies, including the Read by Fourth case study that MilkCrate built an app for and a couple of others. And then really kind of taking a high level view at when does it make sense to launch an app for a nonprofit program and when does it not? Because that's something that we as a company have learned over the years working with dozens of organizations when you should or should not do this, because there are definitely indicators in both directions. So my background, like I said, I'm the founder of the company, but I'm also deeply involved still in the nonprofit world. I work as the volunteer president of the neighborhood civic association that I live in. I'm also on the board of directors for Philly Startup Leaders, the Links Philadelphia chapter, and the Energy Coordinating Agency here in Philadelphia. I mentioned that my background was in the nonprofit world. I used to work at Planned Parenthood and a few other organizations focused on maternal health and well-being. And so I'm still happily involved in the nonprofit world, just kind of from the perspective of from the company perspective. And I do Habero Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to relieve stress and have fun and get out of the office normally, but now I'm doing it in my closet room upstairs. All right. So first chat question, who here is running a program for volunteers, beneficiaries, members, or others at a nonprofit and wishes engagement and progress tracking was easier? And just, yeah. Let's see, there's my chat window. Yep, Robin said me. And feel free to say what the program is. We're also going to touch on in a little bit. I'm going to ask some questions about like what specific challenges are you having, but I just want to get a feel for, yes, Kai, Natalie, yeah, everyone's like, yes, that's a thing that we struggle with. All right, so here are some tools, and I've divided this from the blue are the analog kind of old school tools, and then we've got the purple, which are the kind of more modern technical digital ones. And so there's a wide range of these that you might be using. And you might be using a combination of them. You may have used some and then ditched some for others. So I'm curious, which of these tools are you using and how well is it serving your needs now? Which do you love and wish you could dump yesterday? Oh, cool. Kai's doing wildlife rehabilitation. That's wonderful. Google Drive a lot, Google Forms, yep. Yeah, I'll go back to that slide, absolutely. Oops, there we go. So yeah, we've got like snail mail, paper client files. I used to use those. Phone calls, sign-in clipboards are a really common one and one that MilkCrate's always helping our clients get rid of. Same with binders and guides where you've got like a physical directory of resources. ID cards are one where you have to like present something to check in. Smart sheets. Sign-in clipboards, yeah, CRM, touchscreen. Yeah, and social media, I mean, what a blessing and a curse, right? I mean, you've got such a powerful tool, but unless you pay to reach your audience, you're only going to capture maybe 1 to 5% of your audience is going to see something that you post. So it's not a guaranteed method of direct communication. Yeah, and email, we all know about those spam filters. Okay, cool, let's move on. Thank you all for sharing. All right, so now that we've kind of talked about the old school stuff and some of the more modern stuff, building on that idea of modern tools and innovation for nonprofit tech, MilkCrate. So what is MilkCrate? It's an affordable and fast way to launch your nonprofit program's app for your audience, choosing from ready-to-go features that match your engagement tracking needs. And so that's all on the app side, and then managing your users and your content and generating activity reports using the admin dashboard that comes with it. So it's kind of like the two parts, and you're seeing that on your screen here. You've got your iPhone app or your Android app. It can be launched to both. And then the admin dashboard on the computer where you can manage your app, see what your users are doing, create new activities, content, events, poll questions, all that good stuff can happen from here. And then it shows up in your app. And we'll talk about that more in a second. But first, I want to kind of go over, this is how we kind of see nonprofit programs moving through their life cycle. The very first stage is enlisting people to get them in the door, right? Sign up to be a volunteer, sign up for this program, those sorts of actions. And then the next step is, how do you engage them? Get them to sign up for another shift, get them to learn more, get them to want to enroll in the next course, evaluating them. How many hours did you log? How consistent were you at showing up? Did you complete all the assignments? Did you achieve the goal that you set out to achieve when you enrolled in the program? And endorse is the last stage, where typically you're both acknowledging the success of the program participant or the volunteer, but maybe also getting the endorsement from your stakeholders, your funders, showing them the good work that you did and saying, here's the report, here's the impact we made, now keep funding us so we can keep doing it and maybe even grow it. MilkCrate, our actual technology and what we help nonprofits do, is better do the engage and evaluate part. That's where we really focus, using mobile technology that we use or build with our platform. But both of those other, the first and the last phase, are things that we're also very cognizant of and how we can help support that. So this is one of our clients, Diego from Inner City Capital Connections. We just had this call a few weeks ago when he was telling me, in the context of COVID, we now more than ever needed an engagement platform. How nice that we already had a digital one. So now that they can no longer do all of their trainings and programs in person, having something in place where they can send communication directly to program participants, engage them and track them right on their phones, has been really important to them, maintaining the level of involvement that they wanted to. Obviously, in these unforeseen circumstances, that was, a huge benefit, but it's something that has been serving them for the almost 2 years, I think, that they've been working with us. So a typical user experience, if you're trying to engage program participants and collect that data about what they're doing in your program, is they download the app, they create a profile, and this is a really important opportunity to collect information like demographic information, and something that is really unique to a mobile app versus maybe just a static website or some other form of information like a Facebook social media post. You're not going to necessarily see things like their age, their race, their gender, their zip code, the kind of things that they're asked to complete when they create a profile on an app, and that you can then use that information as filtering for when you do data analytics on the platform as well. The next step is often choosing a segment. So are you a volunteer in the Northeast or in West Philadelphia? Are you a seventh, or let's say a 10th grader versus a 12th grader? Or are you, different roles within the organization might have different content that they are engaging with in the app. And then finally, earning points, doing activities, progressing, completing challenges. And all of those can take a lot of different forms. We have templated features pre-built, and this is how we're able to do this quickly and affordably, is that you have an events calendar that's already ready-made, where you can have volunteer shifts or learning opportunities that you schedule. People can sign up for them. You can have a cap for how many people can sign up. They can get reminders. They can post comments about the experience they had. They can physically check in on their phone, and it will verify through GPS that they were there at that time, which is a really great way to have verified data about participation. Push notifications when you have something in the app that you want people to see, that you are really emphasizing at a particular time, being able to send that push notification right to their phone and having it open up that activity or piece of content in their phone immediately without having to click through. That really helps increase engagement. We have a directory and map that you can use in a bunch of different ways. Oh, wow, this is remarkable. Thanks, John. Keep those comments coming. We've got polls and surveys. That's a really engaging way to capture people's interest in something, their desire for something, their perspective on something, and doing it in little bits and pieces. It can happen on an ongoing basis. So you don't have to just do a pre and post survey, 6 months apart. People can earn points on their app for answering a question every day or every week. And we have clients that do that because people love to share their opinion. We all have seen that on Twitter, right? So this can be a kind of more fun, wholesome way of capturing people's opinions or interests and using that data to help fuel your program and your evaluation of it. Like I mentioned earlier in the user onboarding is segmenting your users into different groups. And then obviously being able to share content. One of the most common ones is like having a resource library. Read by Fourth is definitely one of the examples that I'll go over that used that feature. I'm going to pause there. Actually, let me go back. I know I just spoke a lot. Any questions or anything I should touch on so far? And you're not seeing the little chat window that I have on my screen, right? I just wanted to make sure I'm not blocking the slides.
You can see your slides.
Okay, great. That's awesome that I can see both. Okay.
So Morgan, I would say that, when we first went through Congress and we had to figure out technology to do this, we were sort of at the front end of actually helping efforts to outcomes where the technology go through this. And people always ask me, like, if you were to do it differently, who would you pick? And I would say that I wish you were around way back then. We ended up spending so much money, both in staff resources, but also in the development of just figuring out how to measure a complex organization and all the data right around. Yeah. And so I always tell MilkCrate is that solution that really is cost effective, but yet it's so much user and friendly too. So of all the software projects, although I personally haven't engaged in MilkCrate because I haven't had an organization to put all this data into, I wish I could go back 10 years, bring you back with us, and the world would probably look like a very different place. So I would just say that to all the listeners.
Thanks so much, Nick. I really appreciate that. I had a discovery call with an organization a few weeks ago. They told me they'd spent something like $200,000 building something from scratch, and it was almost identical to MilkCrate. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry I didn't know you 4 years ago. But yeah, there are a lot of organizations out there that are trying to build stuff from scratch if they're lucky enough to get a grant that big, but usually it's just way too expensive to try and build something from scratch, which is why, again, this slide says templated features. We're not building an events calendar from scratch every single time we launch a MilkCrate app. The events calendar in the Read by Fourth app is the same events calendar code in the WeVote app as in the Mighty Writers app, in the Hungry Harvest app. Like all of our events calendars, all the poll questions, it's the same templated feature. So it makes it so much faster and cheaper to launch something like this. Robin asked a question, do participants pay for MilkCrate? No, the way that we work is we partner with nonprofits that pay for the service of launching a MilkCrate app that's their brand, their content, their users, for their audience. We also actually partnered with foundations, and this kind of touches on something that Nick was talking about earlier, is when funders want to see impact and they want to help with capacity. We've actually gotten several foundations to commit to funding apps for their grantees. So we'll work directly with a nonprofit, or we'll work with a foundation to then get to work directly with a nonprofit. But typically there's no need to charge your program participants, and that's typically going to be an unwanted barrier. We have a couple of social enterprises that use a MilkCrate app to run their program. They're not nonprofits, and the people that they're serving are not like a disadvantaged or like underserved population, and they are actually exploring charging for their apps, but that's a pretty different use case than nonprofits and what we're talking about. Does MilkCrate's downloaded sample app offer some perhaps minimum set of tools a low budget nonprofit can see that might be done? Okay, so we're getting kind of into the demo question. And so we'll be sending out, I'm going to send out an email to all of the people that registered after this, offering if you would like to see a demo and get a deeper dive into how MilkCrate works, we will set that up so that you and I can spend 30 minutes kind of going over this stuff. We do have a demo app and things like that that we can walk through together, but we'll follow up with that and we can talk about that. Okay, and yes, there is a range of fees. We do a sliding scale, so that makes it so that we can work with a very wide range of organizations, from really tiny ones to really big ones, really underfunded ones to really well-funded ones. So yeah, that's part of our mission, is to be able to serve every nonprofit that wants to work with us. Okay, so the next question, what engagement or tracking problems are you currently experiencing? And then I added working remotely might be a particularly new challenge that you might be experiencing with your members, volunteers, students, or beneficiaries. And I'll just talk about an example of another client. The Youth Volunteer Corps is one of our clients, and they typically use their MilkCrate app to provide volunteer opportunities to their youth that then sign up for that opportunity, track their experience all in their app. Now, those volunteer experiences are obviously everything that they had been doing are suspended because they were all in person. They've then transitioned all of their experiences to be digital service work that the kids can do. So things like sending e-cards to families with someone's recovering from cancer, or doing a plastic audit in their home. So they've found activities that the teens can keep doing and keep kind of building experience doing that good work while still at home. So if anyone else wants to share any engagement or tracking problems in the chat, feel free to go ahead and do that. Okay. So I mentioned WeVote. This is another, I'm going to do some case studies just to kind of get the wheels turning a little bit more about seeing if this might be something that could be useful. So the Committee of 70 runs a program called WeVote. It's an opportunity for businesses to actually partner with this nonprofit so that their employees can be more civically engaged. And we basically transformed this whole program by launching an app where all the content, volunteer opportunities, education, surveys, all of that now lives in this app, and each employer that signs up has their own team. And so they're earning points as a team as well as individually for signing up to run the polls, or for downloading the voter guide, or watching videos of candidates, things like that. And so their goal is to really just cultivate a culture of civic participation and voting in Philadelphia. And we've been really thrilled to support that with MilkCrate. Now, an example of outputs versus outcomes, I wanted to kind of touch on this because I knew this is something that Nick and Claire are really wonderful at talking about. So in the context of, say, a WeVote-like scenario, an outcome, I should have labeled this, or sorry, an output on the left is there were 450 instances of voters viewing the voter guide this election cycle in the app. So that's like an output, a number of things that happened kind of in a discrete measurement. Now, the outcome that we're hoping to achieve is app users were 50% more likely to vote after downloading the app at least 1 week before the election. And these are both examples of things that we can actually measure using a MilkCrate app, right? Like how many users opened the voter guide in the app, we can measure that. But then we can also measure check-ins at the polls or self-reported voting in a poll question, and what the delta looks like if they did that within a certain time period of downloading the app. So those are all the kinds of data questions that our clients are always asking, or that we're helping them think to ask when it comes to outputs and outcomes, and how they can use something like an app to start measuring that and reporting on it, often in a very verified way. Gamification of engagement, absolutely, that is what we're all about. Now, this one is foundations and their reporting expectations. So often, you've got foundations thinking, well, we'll give you funding, you're going to go do good work, and that's going to lead to outputs, outcomes, and impacts, right? And that it's just going to be this really neat, simple equation. And it can be, but rarely is it that easy. And I'm curious to hear from you all. How many of your funders have asked for program data, impact data, progress reports, and you then experience some sort of barrier collecting that data, often in a timely or accurate way, right? Like, how am I ever supposed to know what happened with that cohort from 6 months ago, or what their thoughts were, or what they accomplished when we had hundreds of them, or something like that? So what kind of barriers, what kind of expectations have you experienced, and might something like this have been able to make a difference? That's one of the things that we're really always trying to help with, is having that dashboard where all of your user data is just right there in real time, so that if a funder says, how many people did blank last month, you can just take a screenshot and send it to them in an email without having to do any extra work. Or if they say, we'd love to know blank moving forward, then you can use our system to start measuring that as well. Okay, looks like no one's either are tired or don't have any examples, so we'll just skip to the next one. Now, like I said, this is kind of what we're hoping to achieve, and what we've been able to deliver for a lot of our clients has been this idea that funders give money to a nonprofit program. That program can use MilkCrate to design and launch an app for their program participants. Those program participants engage by completing activities, things that can lead to both an output or an outcome or both. And then that data shows up on a dashboard that can then be reported back to funders. And this is the kind of virtuous cycle we're hoping to create through funding nonprofit activities in their programs with their participants and the data that the app can generate about that. Okay, who is wondering what the accessibility of mobile is to different demographic audiences? Is there a magic bullet for reaching everyone with one tool? I'm not even going to bother asking. I'm sure you guys are all thinking about that. So here's some really important Pew data from 2019. Americans of all ages are increasingly likely to say that they mostly go online using their smartphone. You can see these are all, this is broken down by ages. So obviously the older the group gets, the lower it is. But you can see the trend line is quite clear for all US adults in all age ranges. And that for, particularly in the under 50, it's at least something like 50% or more are relying on their phones. And then over here on the right-hand side, the majority of Americans have a smartphone. So you can look at this, all these age, race, education, income, and geography breakdowns. The vast majority of every single group are using a smartphone. So if you ever have wondered to yourself, are my people using a smartphone? Yes, they are. All right, so let's get into a few more case studies. So we talked about the Read by Fourth. So we built an app for the Reading Captains program. And this is, just a quick case study about how we did that. And basically the Reading Captains were given a binder of all the materials that they needed to go out into the community and share to help promote literacy, to get kids on grade reading level. And that was a big binder for them to carry around. And then trying to collect the information around what are they doing, what's going well, what isn't, was another kind of laborious task on the staff. And so now with the Read by Fourth app, the resources are all in their phone wherever they go. So whenever they're talking to a family, they can quickly pull up the information they need to share, and then they can document the experience of what it was like sharing that information, what the family got out of it, any challenges they had. And there's a lot of knowledge sharing amongst the volunteers through the app, which has been really wonderful to see. There's a whole activity feed where you can see in real time the photos, the comments, everything that the volunteers are doing, showing up and populating that feed. The STAMP program, the Cultural Alliance runs an initiative called the STAMP program, where teens can go to museums for free. They used to have to rely on a paper ID card to check in. Now the kids check in on their phones, and they instantly get verified that they're at that location, and the pass pops up on their phone, and the admissions desk lets them into the museum. And then they can see in real time the data around how many teens are going to which museums and when. And you can see some screenshots of some of those charts here. Visits to the Franklin Institute were very popular in January, as was the PMA. And Michael Norris, who used to run that program, was a really great champion for this, and it was a really great fit. So just to kind of go over some of the bullet points here and getting into when does an app make sense. So apps are valuable when there's a goal to better engage your program participants and track data. That's number one. Needs to be a value to the users where they complete activities, consume content, can communicate in a way that was easier and more rewarding than they used to be able to do. So it has to be an upgrade for them. The gamification can certainly help make it more fun, but it also has to be useful or interesting to them. And we kind of touched on that. The value to the staff, it has to be something that helps the staff do their jobs more easily as well. This has to be seen as something that helps them eliminate something that used to be ineffective or time sucking, and help them get the results that they're looking for. And same for the funders. They want to be able to see that transparent success data as well. Now, this is a chart I made to just really simply summarize when does an app make sense. If you need consistent engagement with your audience and you need that behavior data or that progress data on an ongoing basis, that's when an app makes sense. If you don't need that, if you don't need behavior data, if you don't need consistent engagement, then maybe a one-time survey or a website, depending on the situation, can make sense. And so we kind of do a whole discovery process with any nonprofit that we talk to to kind of figure out where on this chart they fall, so that they can kind of figure out whether or not it makes sense to work with us. So getting towards the end, who has explored an app before and found that it was going to be too much time, money, or beyond their expertise? And Nick kind of let the cat out of the bag on this one, that we are obviously a much more affordable, faster way of doing this than what used to be available 3, 5, 10 years ago. But I'm curious if any of you have ever looked into building an app, particularly from scratch, and seen the often 6-figure price tag that can come from that. Okay. So we already kind of know where this is going, but typically MilkCrate is something like 1/10 of what it would cost to do this from scratch. We do operate on a sliding scale, and we do not charge a whole large lump sum up front and then walk away. It's much more an ongoing relationship where we're committed to helping you succeed over the long haul, and our business model reflects that. We're also designed specifically for nonprofits' unique needs and developed the right templated features to solve them. MilkCrate is only designed to help nonprofits. We're not working with giant corporations and all these other types of groups that, you know, we have in the past. We realized that we wanted to specifically serve nonprofits, and that's where we focus all of our energy. And that makes it so that we can launch something quickly in weeks or months instead of years. And you're supported that whole time through a client support specialist who helps make sure that you have the understanding of the platform and how to use it every step of the way. So we work with a wide range of organizations now: civic organizations, volunteer programs, education and training, social services, youth groups, membership programs, really broad range of nonprofits, some really wonderful success stories in all of these. If you see yourself reflected in some of these case studies of what might be for your organization, I'd urge you to get in touch. We will be sending out an email where you'll have my contact information and have an opportunity to have a discovery call to see if this is something that could help you with your organization's impact and measuring it and growing it over time. So that's the end of the actual slides for the presentation. We can absolutely do some more Q&A. If you would like a copy of the actual PDF of the slides, there is a form that we're going to send out, a survey. The URL is right here, but we'll also send out in an email. And anyone who fills out the feedback survey will get the PDF. So that's my